Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav and we'll be learning today in Miyirtza Hashem. I turned the page by mistake. We'll be learning today Miyirtza Hashem Daf Kuf Ches Amid Beis, and we're continuing to learn Hilchos Succah. We pick up today on the top line of Kuf Ches Amid Beis in Siman Taf Reish Mem. We're up to the words of the Haggah, the words of the Ramah on the top line Kuf Ches Amid Beis, near the end of Sif Vav. So we learned yesterday that a chasan, a groom, v'shushbinav, his friends, his groomsmen would be the translation of the word shushbinav, I believe. V'chol b'nei ha'chuppah, all of the people are coming to be mesameach chasan v'kala. We said that they are ptur from Succah, kol shivas yemei mishnah. And we saw that the reason for this ptur, actually the Rishonim discussed two possible reasons for the ptur. The problem is that in those days they used to make a chuppah, not to be confused with what we call a chuppah, the chuppah that we do the kedushin underneath in the chasana hall, the canopy that we call the chuppah. They made a chuppah. The chuppah was a special structure, kind of like a three-walled gazebo, where the chassan and the kala would stay for the shivas yemei mishnah. That's where they would have their seudais, and that's where people would come to visit them to be mesameach chassan v'kala. And that's where they had the simcha of the Shivas Yemei Mishnah. You can't do that in a sukkah. A sukkah is a diras arai. The sukkah would normally not be large enough to be able to have to be over the size to be able to make the simchas chassid v'kala in the sukkah. To leave the chuppah and have to go to the sukkah would be a problem. And now the ptur is based either on oisik b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah. The chassan is being misameach as ishtai. He's rejoicing together with his kala, with his wife, and the guests are coming to be misameach chassan v'kala. So there's an inyan, say the Rishonim, of oisik b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah. There's also an inyan of mitzvah. If the chassan is going to have to leave the chuppah and go to the sukkah and not be oisik in the simcha, he's going to be mitzvah, so says the Meiri. So we have different possible reasons for the ptur. Now, the Ramah says on the top line of Kuf Ches Amid Beis, Usuudas bris mila. When it comes to the suda of a bris, somebody has a boy and now he's making a bris on Sukkos. V'chein hasuuda sha'oichlin eitzel hayoledes. Or they would make some kind of celebratory meal by a yoledes. Chayavin b'sukkah, those suudais are chayavin b'sukkah. You cannot eat that suda outside of a sukkah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Lamedalud, usuudas bris mila, hainu afilu im tsar lahem amakom lo shevesh sham. Says the Chavetz Chaim, even if normally when you make a bris, you go ahead and you make a bris and you invite 80 people, 100 people, and you don't have a sukkah with that kind of capacity, so you're not going to be able to make a large suda like you normally would. It's too small. Lo shevesh sham. And if you're going to make the suda in the sukkah, you're not going to be able to have a simcha like you normally would have by a bris. Nevertheless, you are still chayiv in sukkah. And the Chavetz Chaim goes now to express what's the difference between this and the chassan. Even though there's no question that the seudas habris is a sudas mitzvah, Siman in Hilchos Mila, it definitely is said that the seudas bris mila is a sudas mitzvah. Nevertheless, this cannot be compared to the suda of a chassan. Shehi mitzvah gedola l'sameach chasan v'kala. The suda of the chasana and the suda of the shivas yemei mishnah is a mitzvah gedola l'sameach chasan v'kala. We have a chassan and a kala that just got married. We want to send them off in the right way with tremendous simcha at the beginning of their binyan adayad. We want it to be a binyan adayad, and we want them to build a successful, happy home. We have to get them started in the right way. So the mitzvah to be misameach chasan v'kala is a tremendous mitzvah. V'nikrei sudas mitzvah b'chol makom, and we find it referred to in Divrei Chazal as a sudas mitzvah b'chol makom. But the sudas mitzvah of the bris isn't as big of a Sudas mitzvah as the mitzvah, the Suda of the Shivas Yemei Mishnah, the Suda of the Chasana. V'imkein, and therefore, Dailehem Ba'asara Anoshim, it's enough if you have 10 men. You wanted to make a bris, you wanted to have 80 people, it's okay. On Sukkot, you'll have 10 people in the Sukkah, you'll have a minyan, you'll be able to bench with a minyan, and that's enough of a simcha for a bris. However, nevertheless, says the Mishnah Berurah, Umikam Makaim B'Shmini Atzeres, if the bris fell out on Shmini Atzeres. So Shmini Atzeres in Chutz La'aretz, B'Zman Hazeh, we go ahead and we eat in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres. Why? Because of Sveika D'Yoma. It's a suffix. Maybe it's really Yom Shvi Shal Sukkos. Maybe it's really the last day of Sukkos and you're still chayiv in Sukkah. So you're only eating in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, B'din D'Rabbanan, Al Sveika D'Yoma. Mikam Makam Shmini Atzeres, Im Reitzim, if you want, Yichaylim Lechel Babayis B'Sudas Bris Mila, you could make the Seudas Bris Mila outside of the Sukkah in the house on Shmini Atzeres, especially by us. Anan Bekian Bekviyah Diyarcha. We really know which day is the last day of Sukkot and which day is Shmini Atzeres. We keep the second day of Yom Tov. We keep the dinim of Shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Golius Mitam Minig Aviseinu Biyadenu. So, okay, over here we have a bris milah, we could be makel, and you can make the Seudas HaBris outside of the Sukkah. Just bear with me for 1 second. Let's take a look at something very quickly. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know why it didn't catch me earlier. Trying to remember what this Suda She'oichlin Eitzel Hayaledes is referring to. All right, we'll try to get back on that. Okay, weiter. Now we go to Siv Zayin. Second line in the Shulchan Aruch Kuf Chesam and Beis. Shluchei mitzvah pturim min hasukah. People that are traveling for mitzvah purposes are exempt, they're ptur from the mitzvah of Sukkah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamed Hey. Shluchei mitzvah. Who do we call shluchei mitzvah? Says the Chavetz Chaim, Kegoyim, for example, Shaholeich lahakbil pnei rabbi. Somebody is going on Yom Tov lahakbil pnei rabbi. Chazal bring down that on Yom Tov there's an Indian to go to your Rebbe to learn Torah. So somebody's going lahakbil pnei rabbi on Yom Tov, or Yilil my Torah, or Stam, he's going to learn Torah. He heard that there's a good shir. There's somebody giving a very special Daf Yomi shir. He wants to go on Yom Tov, or other Limud Torah. Oile Pidyon Shvuyim, or somebody's being Isaac in the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim. He's redeeming a captive, and he has to go travel around. He has to raise money. The Kayotza Bazeh, or anything similar to that. So these are people who are traveling for mitzvah purposes. The Mechaber said, Pturim in Asukah, Ois Katan Lamed Vav, Afilu B'Shas Chaniyosan. They are ptur from Sukkah, even when they are now encamped. In other words, they're traveling, they're busy, but eventually they reach a time and place where they set up camp and they stop traveling. So right now he's not a traveler, he's not traveling, yet still in all, since he is out of he's away from home, traveling for mitzvah purposes, he's ptur from Sukkah even when he's camping, and even, says the Mishnah Berurah, v'yesh lifnehem Sukkah benuya. This ptur of shluchei mitzvah is a ptur even when you are camping, and even if you have a sukkah that technically you could use. Now, you have to say that the kavanah of the Mishnah Berurah over here is not pshat that you took a motel room and it happens to be that it's a Yiddish motel and there's a sukkah right outside your door, and you could just as easily go eat supper in the sukkah, you could just as easily go sleep in the sukkah, but you have a blanket ptur of shluchei mitzvah and you're not mechuyev to walk 3 steps out of your way and use the sukkah. We're going to see it does not mean that, because the Mishnah Berurah later on is going to tell you that it's clear from the Ramah, not the Mishnah Berurah. The Ramah is going to tell us that if there's no tercha involved at all, in going ahead and being yotzei the mitzvah of Sukkah, then obviously you have a chiyuv of Sukkah. The ptur is when there's some level of tircha. You are shluchei mitzvah. If it's going to take a level of tircha to go be mekayim the mitzvah of Sukkah, then you have a ptur. But if there's no tircha at all, if there's a Sukkah right outside your door, of course you have to go be mekayim the mitzvah of Sukkah. So the Mishnah Berurah, when he says over here, afilu b'shas chaniyosam, the shluchei mitzvah are potter from Sukkah, even when they're resting, even when they're camped, v'yesh lifneim sukkah benuya, and there is a built sukkah available, it means that there's a sukkah available, but it's 2 blocks down. It's 3 blocks away. It's 4 blocks away. We got to get the food. We got to find a box. We got to put it in a box. We got to get over there. We got to figure out what are we eating with, where are we washing, etc., etc. So if there's a tircha, then they have a ptur. There are those mefarshim that want to say that there are words perhaps missing here in the Mishnah Berurah to that extent. But in any case, it's mukhrich, and I'll show you how. It's mukhrich that's what the Mishnah Berurah means. Now this ptur, the Mechaber said, did I read it yet? No, I didn't read it yet. So let's just go back to the words of the Mechaber, Sivches, holchei, Siv Zayin, shluchei mitzvah, second line down, shluchei mitzvah ptur min Sukkah, bein b'yom u bein balayla. Shluchei mitzvah ptur from Sukkah, both by day and by night. Ois kat lamed zayin in the Mishnah Berurah, bein bayom u bein balayla, they're potter by day and by night. Hainu afilu holchin rak bayom. The chiddush over here is they're only traveling by day. At night they're not traveling. Yet the ptur of shluchei mitzvah applies both by day. They're not mechuyev to find a sukkah to eat in by day, and by night they could sleep in a motel room. They could sleep in a tent. They don't have to go find a sukkah to sleep in. Pturin gam balayla. Why? Now we get finally to what is the basis of this ptur of shluchei mitzvah. And the Chavetz Chaim says the reason for this ptur is mipnei shetrudim b'machshavas hamitzvah v'tikuna, because the people that are traveling for mitzvah purposes, they are very busy. Even if they're not traveling right now, we're going to see that there's a different ptur for a traveler. That's going to be in the next sif. Sif Ches is going to talk about a traveler. A traveler, for whatever reason that he's traveling, also has a ptur from Sukkah. But here in Sif Zayin, we're not talking about a stam traveler. Here in Sif Zayin, we're talking about shluchei mitzvah. They're traveling for mitzvah purposes, and the whole time that they're traveling for mitzvah purposes, trudim b'machasheves hamitzvah v'tikuna. They are busy, they're torrid, they're thinking about the mitzvah, they're working on the mitzvah. The mitzvah is their focus. Somebody is traveling for Pidyon Shvuyim. He knows he has to raise $250,000 to go ransom somebody, to go ransom a yid, to get him out of captivity. He's always thinking, he's on the phone. Okay, this gvir is calling me back, that gvir is calling me back. How do I handle this guy? How do I handle that guy? Who should I call? I want to reach out to Pliny, but I don't have a connection with him. Maybe I could call so-and-so and he could call him. Any minute the phone might ring. Any minute you might come up with another reason. Then you have to figure out where should we finish traveling for today? Where should we go tomorrow? Does it make sense to go this way? Does it make sense to go that way? So there's a constant tirda that is all focused on the accomplishing of the mitzvah. The heavy akoil b'chlal oisik b'mitzvah upater mi mitzvah acheres. So here finally the Chavetz Chaim tells us what's pshat over here in Sif Zayin, that shluchei mitzvah are pturim in Sukkah, and why are they pater from Sukkah both by day and by night? Because they are constantly oisik b'mitzvah. And oisik b'mitzvah is pater ben mitzvah. So they're not mechuyev to go ahead and be matriach, to go figure out, I heard that there might be a sukkah half a mile away. Let me call this guy, find out if there's a sukkah. Let me call that guy. All of that time could be spent on the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim. Or it could be whatever mitzvah you're being Isaac in. Now you are diverting your focus away from the mitzvah that you're traveling for, and now you're taking away from that to be mekayim the mitzvah of sukkah. And oisik b'mitzvah is pater min ha-mitzvah. However, let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch here, where in the parentheses, 3 lines down, the Ramah says, Va'ayin le'el siman lamed ches. The Ramah sends us back to Hilchas Tefillin in Chelik Aleph, in Siman Lamed Ches. And if you take a look over here in the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamed Ches, Va'ayin Le'el Siman Lamed Ches, what the Ramah is referring to is Besif Ches Bahagah. The Ramah over here means to send us to Siman Lamed Ches and Hilchas Tefillin, Siman Lamed Ches, Siv Ches, in the words of the Ramah over there. Now, the Mechaber says over there in Siman Lamed Ches, Siv Ches, Koisvei Tefillin and Mezuzos, Seifrim who write Tefillin and Mezuzos, Haim, the Seifrim themselves, V'tagarehem, and the vendors that sell their wares, V'tagarehem, so these are the wholesalers, the retailers, V'chola oiskim b'meleches shamayim, and anybody else who is busy doing meleches shamayim, doing mitzvah work, pturim me'anochas tefillin, they are ptur from putting on tefillin, kol hayom, all day long, zulas b'shas kriyas shema utfila. Somebody who's being oisik b'mitzvah, somebody who's writing tefillin, he's not mechuyev to stop writing the tefillin in order to put on tefillin. He's oisik b'mitzvah, he's ptur bin ha-mitzvah. And the Mechaber goes so weit, the Mechaber says, he's ptur all day long, except for Zman Kriyas Shema and Zman Tefillah. When he's saying Kriyas Shema, he should put on tefillin. When he's davening Shemona Esrei, he should put on tefillin. Says the Ramah, Vim ha'yutzrichim lasos malachton b'shas Kriyas Shema u'tefillah. Let's say they have to do their work when it's time to say Kriyas Shema and it's time to daven. And the Mishnah Berurah over here says, what does that mean? He said, I'll tell you what it means. It means that the Sefer has a big order for tefillin, and he has to finish the tefillin. Somebody needs tefillin. So he's writing tefillin in the morning. But he figures, I have time to say Kriyas Shema. So 10 minutes before Zman Kriyas Shema, I'll take a break, and I'll say Kriyas Shema. Okay, comes a few minutes before Zman Kriyas Shema, he puts down his kulmus, he puts down his quill, he gets ready to say Kriyas Shema, puts his hand over his eyes, a guy comes and says, I didn't put on tefillin, I need tefillin. I need tefillin right now, and I'm about to go to the airport. If I don't leave to the airport within the next few minutes, I'm going to miss my flight. So, okay. So then he's ptur, says the Ramah. The Sefer is ptur from Kriyas Shema. Because right now he has to do his malacha. He has to sell this yid a pair of tefillin. And he's got to sell it to him right now. Because otherwise the guy's going to miss his flight. So he goes and he gets a pair of tefillin and he concludes the sale. And now he missed Zman Kriyas Shema. Says the Ramah, that's okay. Oisik b'mitzvah, ptur min ha-mitzvah. And the point of the Ramah is, the Mechaber said that oisik b'mitzvah is ptur from tefillin, except for Zman Kriyas Shema. Says the Ramah, no, not so fast. It could be that the Sefer or the person who's selling the tefillin is also going to be ptur from Kriyas Shema, because it could be he has to do his malacha b'zman Kriyas Shema. In that case, he's ptur from Kriyas Shema also. And then he's ptur from putting on tefillin by Zman Kriyas Shema. So here we have, here at Hilchas Tefillin, again, this concept of oisik b'mitzvah ptur bin ha-mitzvah. Now the Ramah over here continues, and he says, the kol ha'oisik b'mitzvah ptur mi-mitzvah acheres, and now comes the punchline that's neged to us here in Hilchas Succah. Im tzarich litroyach achar ha'acheres. When is it true that oisik b'mitzvah ptur bin ha-mitzvah? If it's going to take a tircha to be mekayim the second mitzvah. Aval, however, im yochel laseh shtein ka'achas b'loi torach, if you could accomplish both mitzvahs without any tircha, yaseh shtein. Do both. So this Ramah over here by us in Siv Zayin that says va'ayin le'el siman lamed ches, what's he telling us? Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamed Ches. That I just read to you. The Muchach Sham, it's very clear over there in the words of the Ramah. The Dafka Kishatzarach L'Troyach Achar Sukkah. This ptur of Oisik b'mitzvah ptur min ha-mitzvah that tells me that the shluchei mitzvah are ptur from Sukkah, that's only if it's going to take a tircha to go far in the Sukkah and eat in the Sukkah. But if there's a Sukkah right outside the motel room, of course you have to go eat in the Sukkah. If there's no tircha involved in being mekayim the mitzvah of Sukkah, there's a Sukkah right there ready to be used. Then they have to eat in the Sukkah and they have to sleep in the Sukkah. And now you cannot tell me, this is why I told you earlier in the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Lamed Vav, when the Chavetz Chaim says that pturim min Sukkah, they're ptur from Sukkah, even v'yesh lifneim Sukkah benuya, even if there's a Sukkah built right there in front of them, the Mishnah Berurah cannot mean that they're ptur from Sukkah even if there's a Sukkah right outside the motel room, because here in Ois Cotton Lamed Ches, the Mishnah Berurah tells me very clearly, if there's a Sukkah mizumenes lefanov, avada they have to use it. There's no ptur of Isaac b'mitzvah, ptur ben mitzvah, if being mekayim the mitzvah Sukkah is not going to detract from the other mitzvah that you're being Isaac in any way, shape, or form. You could be on the phone with the gvir while you walk into the Sukkah, while you're eating in the Sukkah. It's right outside your door. There's no problem. So behechrich, in Ois Kat Lamed Vav, the Mishnah Berurah must mean v'yesh lifneim Sukkah benuya, but there's going to be a level of tircha in using it. And that's why some suggest that there's a mistake in the text over here. Maybe it shouldn't say the word lifneim. Maybe it should just say v'yesh Sukkah benuya, but it's 3 blocks away. Now, somebody asked me, well, wait a second. Why can't we say that the Chavetz Chaim is telling me this is a machlokes, the Mechaber and the Ramah? The Ramah says, the Mechaber says, Shluchei mitzvah ptur min Sukkah bein b'yom bein b'layla. And on that, the Mishnah Berurah says that the ptur applies even if there's a Sukkah benuya lifneihem. Then the Ramah says, V'ayin le'el Siman lamed ches. And the Mishnah Berurah says, Ritzainai loymar, go look at Hilchas Tefillin, where over there it's clear that the Ramah holds that if there's no tircha, then you're still mechuyev to do the other mitzvah. I don't think you could say that. I mean, first of all, I have to see back in Siman Lamed Ches. Not sure it would be Eis gehalten in Siman Lamed Ches. But even here, if the Ramah came to be chaylik on the Mechaber, he wouldn't just say V'ayin le'el Siman Lamed Ches. He would say what he means. He would come to be chaylik on the Mechaber. He wouldn't leave it vague in a simple reference to Siman Lamed Ches. So I don't think there's any machlokes over here between the Ramah and the Mechaber. Continues the Chavetz Chaim in Ois Cotton Lamed Ches, right by the Ois Cotton Nun Zayin for the Sharet Tzion. So, the Chavetz Chaim just told me, the Shluchei mitzvah, if there's no tircha involved in eating in the Sukkah or sleeping in the Sukkah, then they're mechuyev to eat in the Sukkah or sleep in the Sukkah. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, V'yemein yecholim lishan kol kach b'toiv b'Sukkah. Let's say the guy knows he's not going to get a good night's sleep in the Sukkah. Maybe he doesn't have a good bed. Maybe he's staying in a motel. The motel has a beautiful double bed or a beautiful, full-size bed with a good mattress, good pillows, and he's going to get a good night's sleep. In the Sukkah, he's going to sleep on a bench. He's going to chop a pillow and a blanket from the motel room, and he's going to sleep on a bench, and he knows he's not going to get a good night's sleep. In that case, the yigayim lamachar, now the guy's not going to get a good night's sleep and he's going to be tired the next day. And now he's not going to be able to be mekayim the mitzvah. Pturin, then he's ptur. An example just came to my head because of this. Let's say this fellow is a Maggid Shir. He's going traveling on Sukkot. He's going someplace to give a shir. And he has to give the shir at 8 o'clock in the morning. So he travels the night before. And he knows if he sleeps on a bench in the Sukkah, he's not going to get a good night's sleep. He's going to catch 2 hours of sleep. And in the morning, when he has to go to the shir, he's going to be exhausted. And he's not going to be able to be masber the shir the same way. I could tell you, if I'm exhausted and I have to give the shir, there are some times that I'm prepared, I'm ready to record the shir. I can't record the shir. I'm tired. I'm going to be falling asleep. I'm going to be holding my eyes open, trying not to fall asleep while I say the shir. Those shiurim are not the same. Trust me, you probably notice it. It has happened every now and then that I was very, very tired when I said the shir. You know that there are some times that I listen to the last 5 minutes of the shir to make sure that I didn't slur my words or say something silly or say something wrong during the last 5 minutes of the shir because I know that I was falling asleep. I was fighting sleep during the last 5 minutes of the shir. Those shiurim are not the same. So if this guy knows that if he sleeps in the Sukkah, the shir tomorrow is not going to be the same shir, so he's not going to be mekayim the mitzvah. He's not going to be mekayim the mitzvah, lalami Torah, to teach Torah the same way. So then, says the Chavetz Chaim, pturin, then he's ptur from Sukkah, and he should go back into the motel room and sleep in the motel room. Okay. That was Siv Ches. That was Siv Zayin. Now we go to Siv Ches. Siv Ches, the Mechaber says, holchei derachim, travelers. not shluchei mitzvah. These people are traveling for dvar rishus. They're traveling for voluntary needs, maybe business. Whatever it is, he's traveling. He's traveling for a tzorich. But he's not traveling for a tzorchei mitzvah. He's traveling, so to speak, for divrei rishus, for optional, personal reasons. Holchei derachim bayom, says the Mechaber, somebody who's traveling during the day, pturim min Succah bayom, he's parted from Succah during the day. V'chayavim balayla. But whenever he gets to where he's getting at night, or if he's staying in a hotel, whatever it is, he's chayav in Succah at night. Why? Why is this different than shluchei mitzvah? Very simple. Different ptur. What's the ptur over here? Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in lamites. Holchei derachim. Somebody who's traveling. Why does a traveler have a ptur from Succah? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the ptur of a traveler is the teishvu kein taduru amar achmana. Because like we've said already so many times, learning Succah, the chiyuv of Succah is teishvu kein taduru. You're mechuyev to live in the Succah the way you live in your house. V'yadua, and it is well known, kisha adam dar bebeisai b'shar yomais hashana. All year long, a person lives in his house. Einoi nimna milinisai ala eze inyan umaniach his beisai. If he has to travel, he goes traveling and he leaves his house. V'kein hu adin b'sukkah. All year long, you live in a house. If you have to go travel, you leave your house and you go travel. So now it's Sukkot. So now I don't live in my house, now I live in my Sukkah. All right, I live in my Sukkah, but now I have to travel. So I leave my house to go travel. When I leave my house to go travel, I'm out of the Sukkah. I could be out of the Sukkah. And if it's time to eat, I could eat. And I don't have to eat in the Sukkah. So v'chein hu hadin b'Sukkah. Now, this ptur of teishu kein taduru, so that applies while you're traveling. But now, if you're not traveling, now I'm not traveling during the day. Now it's already nighttime. I'm not traveling. So if you're not traveling, it's time to go to sleep. Go find a sukkah to sleep in. You're traveling. So you're driving along the New York State Thruway, and it's time for lunch. You're out of your house. I'm traveling now. So the same way, I leave my house in the morning all year long, and I go to work. And if I have to eat something, I chop a sandwich at my desk. So today I left my sukkah. I woke up in the morning. I left my house, i.e. my sukkah, and now I'm traveling. I'm driving along the thruway, and I'm passing through Sloatsburg, and I'll pull over by the rest stop, and I'll break out a sandwich, and I'll eat a sandwich. So I could go ahead, and I could eat. I don't have to wait to eat sukkah. I don't have to wait another hour or whatever it is until I get somewhere where I might be able to find a sukkah. Now, if you pull over by Sloatsburg and you find out that there's a sukkah by Sloatsburg, so go eat in the sukkah. But you're not mechuyev to say, I'm not going to be able to eat lunch until I get to, Monroe. Now, if you could plan it out without any tircha, without any loss, why not? But if it's going to be a problem, you're not mechuyev to inconvenience yourself while you're traveling to go wait. But even though you're patur from Sukkah during the day, you're chayav in Sukkah at night. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu kishalon balayla b'makam yishuv. Now you come at night to an inhabited area. If you're in an uninhabited area at night, that means you're still traveling. You're still out on the road. If you're out on the road, you're not mechuyev to go build a sukkah while you're out on the road. You're not mechuyev to go find materials and build a sukkah. You're not mechuyev to bring materials with you. That's called you're still out on the road. You're still traveling. That's almost like bayom. That's going to be really the next case of the mechaber, which is holchei derachim balayla. So if you're in an uninhabited area at night, so then you have the din of holchei derachim bein bayom u bein balayla. You're traveling by day and you're traveling by night. You didn't arrive in an inhabited area. But if you're traveling by day and you have a destination where you're spending the night and in an inhabited area, so now you're not holchei derachim anymore at night. And therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're now staying the night in an inhabited area, let's say you're staying in the Hilton, but the Hilton doesn't have a sukkah. So yes, I traveled during the day. Now I am in an inhabited area at night. I'm staying overnight in the Hilton. The Hilton doesn't have a sukkah. The host where you're staying is a non-Jew. You have to at least try. Ulai yimtza svivais mishkanai eze Yehudi sheyesh lo sukkah. You have to go try to find. Maybe there's a yid that lives nearby that has a sukkah where I could sleep in the sukkah. By the way, this is very interesting because you're going to find somebody who has a sukkah to sleep in. That means that the Mishnah Berurah is telling me here you have a chiyuv to try to find somebody else who has a sukkah where you could sleep in somebody else's sukkah. Earlier we said if your neighbors go out in your sukkah on Friday night and your sukkah is pitch black, you're not necessarily mechuyev to eat in your neighbor's sukkah because there's a tsar inherent in eating in somebody else's sukkah. Apparently it sounds from here that the tsar is eating in somebody else's sukkah, not sleeping in somebody else's sukkah. That's what it seems like. Without intense iyun, that's what it seems. That's the mashmois over here from the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah is telling me here from the Chayodam, when you get to your Hilton at night, you're mechuyev to be mishtadel. You got to hit the phones and find out if somewhere nearby you there's a yid who has a sukkah that you could sleep in. Okay, so again, what did the Mechaber say over here so far in Sivches? Let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch, 3 lines down. Holchei derachim bayom. If you're traveling by day, pturim in sukkah bayom. You're ptur from sukkah by day, and the ptur over here is teishvu kein taduru. You're mechuyev to live in the sukkah the way you live in your house. And all year round, you leave your house during the day and you travel and you eat on the run. So same to over here. You're traveling, you're out on the road. You could eat on the run. You're not mechuyev to have a sukkah. Aber v'chayavim balayla. But at night, when you arrive at a destination, now you're not a traveler anymore. Now you're mechuyev to try to find a sukkah to sleep in. Holchei derachim balayla. If you're traveling overnight, you're driving to Cleveland to visit your kids, and you want to drive at night while the kids will sleep in the car, so then, pturim balayla. You're allowed to stop at a rest stop on Route 80 and eat a sandwich. You're not mechuyev to only eat a shahakal. You could eat a sandwich in a rest stop on Route 80. You're holchei derachim. You're not mechuyev to bring a pop-up sukkah with you. Now, you tell me you could do it, below shum tircha. You could bring a cute little pop-up sukkah with you in the back of the Suburban, and you could break it out in the rest stop on Route 80, and you could mamish eat in the sukkah below shum tircha. Ma toivu manoyim, 100%. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. But if you don't have that option, you don't have one, and it's expensive, you can't buy one, and you don't have any other way to do it without a tercha, so fine, you could drive on Route 80, and you could go ahead, and you could eat a tuna fish sandwich in the middle of the night in a rest stop on Route 80, because you are holchei derachim balayla. So, ptur balayla, v'chayavim bayoim. And then in the day, if you're not traveling anymore, now you're chayiv during the day. Go ahead, find a sukkah. However, now comes the Ramah with a big caveat, which I'm sure some of you have been thinking already. Haga, the davka kishayuchlu limtzai sukkah. But this is only true if you could find a sukkah. So like I told you, you're holchei derachim bayom. You're traveling during the day, and you have a destination mapped out. You're going to sleep in a Hilton overnight. So you're in a Hilton in middle of Timbuk 3, and the Hilton doesn't have a sukkah, and you make a couple of phone calls, and the nearest Chabad house is 600 miles away. You're in North Dakota. Somebody told me he was in North Dakota on business, and on Shabbos he had to drive 550 miles to get, not on Shabbos, but for Shabbos, he had to drive 550 miles to get to the nearest Chabad house. So you're traveling in North Dakota, and it's very nice. You got to the Hilton. The Hilton doesn't have a sukkah. You made a bunch of phone calls. There isn't a Jew in sight. There isn't a sukkah in sight. But what do you mean? It says holchei derachim bayom are chayiv in sukkah at night. So now I can't go to sleep because I'm chayiv in sukkah. No, says the Ramah, davka kishayuchlu limtzai sukkah. That's only if you could find a sukkah. Avalim eina moitzim sukkah. But if you can't find a sukkah, there is no sukkah around. So then you're not mechuyev, and not only you're not mechuyev, but the Ramah says yuchlu leilech ledarkam af shelo yeshvu ba lo yom v'lo layla. You're allowed to plan to take this trip, even though you go ahead to plan this trip, And you say to yourself, well, I'm going to travel during the day. So during the day, I have no shaila of sukkah, because during the day, it's holchei derachim bayom. I'm ptur from sukkah bayom. But overnight, what am I going to do? It's the middle of North Dakota. There isn't a Jew inside. I'm not going to be able to sleep in the sukkah. Maybe I'm not allowed to take the trip. No, says the Ramah, you are allowed to take the trip. You're allowed to take the trip, even though you're not going to have a sukkah not by day, not by night. And the Ramah explains his thought process. 3 lines up from the bottom. Again, this is Teshu Kain Taduru. All year round, you wouldn't stop from taking a trip, even though you're not going to have a house. You're going to figure it out. So too over here, on Sukkot, you're not mechuyev not to take the trip, because I'm not going to have a sukkah to sleep in. And even though you're only traveling by day, you're not traveling at night. Ptur af balayla, you're ptur at night, because you can't find a sukkah. Now, the way the Levush learns this, and that's the way the Mishnah Berurah learns, you're not mechuyev to go make a sukkah where you're going to be. And that's why I'm telling you, you're not mechuyev to bring sheets of plywood and a Succah mat with you. You're not mechuyev to bring the pop-up sukkah with you. Again, if you could, matoivu manoim, 100%, but you're not mechuyev. You're not mechuyev. You could say during the day I'm ptur because of holchei derachim, and I'm traveling during the day, and at night I'm ptur, even though really I'm only traveling by day. At night I should be chayav to sleep in the sukkah. No, I'm going to be ptur at night too, because there's no sukkah in sight, and I'm not mechuyev to bring a sukkah with me. The same way, if I was traveling during the year, I don't buy a house wherever I'm going. I sleep in the Hilton. I don't bring materials with me to build a house, right? I look on the map, I find a Hilton, I find a Sheraton, I find a Motel 6, and that's where I stay. So on Sukkot also, I left my sukkah, and now I found a Motel 6. I found a Hilton. So that's where I'm staying. I'm not mechuyev to go build a sukkah. Magen Avram is grad chelik. The Magen Avram says that you are mechuyev, but the Mishnah Berurah is not paskening like the Magen Avram. There's a beautiful bir halacha here if you want to see it. The Chavetz Chaim is paskening like the Levush, that the Ramah, when he says there, laseis lo yisham dira, you're not mechuyev to make a sukkah where you go. And the same thing works fakert. If you're traveling overnight, like I said, you're driving long distance to go visit family, and you're driving at night, so the kids are sleeping in the car. So by night, you have a din of holchei derachim. You could eat a tuna fish sandwich in the rest stop. Now by day, you're going to sleep somewhere. By day, there's no sukkah inside. Your family, your older kids, you, if you're up, you're not mechuyev to eat in a sukkah, even though you're not traveling now. Doesn't matter. You're ptur because you don't have a sukkah. There's no sukkah in sight. You have to try to find a sukkah. But if you can't find a sukkah, you're ptur from sukkah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan. Membeis. Avon in a mitzvah sukkah, if you can't find a sukkah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ritzayna Leimar, what the Ramah wants to say is, Shehishtadel, he tried. He hit the phones. He went on the app, the sukkah finding app. V'loy matzah sukkah svilaysav, he can't find a sukkah anywhere in his environs. Yuchal lecha v'lalon ba'isay makam b'li sukkah. He could eat, he could sleep at his Hilton without a sukkah. Ve'ena mechuyev lasei sukkah, and he's not mechuyev to go build a sukkah. And if you see the Sharitzia in Ois Cotton Samach Aleph, Levush, Ushari Achrayim, Ukefi Masha Biyarte Bibir Alacha Dibur Amaska Holchei, Udeloy Kemagen Avram. Now continues the Chavetz Chaim here in Ois Cotton Membeis. V'had the Messiahim Yuchlu Leilech Ledarkam. Then the Ramah said, and I read this already, the Ramah said, Yuchlu, even if you know you're not going to be able to find a sukkah, Yuchlu leilech ledarkam, you could go on your trip, avshalo yeshu baloyam v'loylayla. Says the Chavetz Chaim, what does that mean? V'had the Messiahim Yuchlu leilech ledarkam, Ritzayna Loymar, what the Ramah wants to say is, afilu imu yedeya bebeisai, even if when you're still at home, you didn't leave on your trip yet, you know, shebaderek shahelech lo yitzah sham sukkah, I know, I'm going to drive 8 hours now on the 80, and I'm going to have to eat, and I'm not going to find a sukkah. And I know maybe I'm traveling to Texas. I know that I'm driving even further, and I mapped out my itinerary, and I did my itinerary the way I have to do my itinerary, and I know I'm not going to have a sukkah to sleep in. Still, if you lahachi mutter lot says mi besa. You're allowed to go embark on the trip. The chlal biyodenu, because it's a rule. This is the hard, fast rule of Hilchos Sukkah. Teishvu ke'ein taduru. The chiyuv is teishvu ke'ein taduru. All year round, I leave my house to go on a road trip if I have to, and I sleep wherever I'm going to sleep. I eat wherever I'm going to eat. So too on Sukkahs. I'm allowed to do that on Sukkahs too, and I'm not mechuyev to bring a Sukkah with me. The chanal b'sif cotton lamites. Now, even though we're going, it's not so long yet. We still have a few minutes, but we cannot possibly learn this part of Succah. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking right now in your heads, hey, wait a second. Every year comes hamoed, we start thinking about hamoed trips, and we bring with us potato chips and chocolate and oranges and apples and containers of tuna salad without any cookies, without any crackers, and no cake and no bread, because we're only going to eat something that's not chayiv in Sukkah. Or we try to figure out, where is there a Sukkah? Where can we find a Sukkah? Hey, wait a second. Holchei derachim. I'm traveling. What do I need a Sukkah for? I'm traveling during the day. I left my house during the day. I'm ptur in Sukkah the whole day. Sayonara Sukkah. I'll see you tonight when we come home for supper. If we come home at a decent time, we'll have supper in the Sukkah. If not, we'll eat supper out of the Sukkah somewhere else. Holchei derachim, ptur min Sukkah. A lot of you might be thinking that. Let's take a look at Dirshu, footnote number 41. I'll give you a second to turn and flip the pages. Go find it. It's worthwhile to see this inside. Dirshu, footnote number 41. The second paragraph. So that's 3 lines from the bottom. Velotzeis litiyul. I want to go out for relaxation. A hamoed trip. Velotzeis litiyul. Kishiyodeya shaloi tia loi sham sukkah. I know there's going to be no sukkah. We're going on a hamoed trip. We're going to Lancaster. Rather than Lancaster, you could find sukkahs. So I shouldn't say Lancaster. Maybe I should say somewhere else. I don't know. We're going on a hamoed trip, and I know there's going to be no sukkah. Is that okay? Holchei derachim. Kosa b'shal zetshuva sigras Moshe. The Rishiv that Salve Moshe Zekat Sadim Kodesh Levracha writes, Shem istabrisha aser. That it would seem, it makes sense that this should be aser. You cannot just go on a hamoed trip and rely on the ptur of holchei derachim and be ptur from Sukkah. Mipnei shaloi patra ad Torah mi Sukkah. The Torah did not exempt you from Sukkah. Ela kishem mitztaer ha'adam mimena. Only when there's a ptur of mitztaer. You see, the Rishiv Zatzal is saying something very interesting here. We've been saying all along, the ptur is teishvu ke'ein taduru. The Rishiv Zatzal is adding a knech. What does that mean that the ptur is teishvu ke'ein taduru? The ptur of teishvu ke'ein taduru, the whole ptur of mitztaer, is based on teishvu ke'ein taduru. The same way I would leave my house if I'm mitztaer, I could leave my sukkah if I'm mitztaer. So too, the Rishiv Zatzal is looking at this heter of holchei derachim. It would seem he's looking at it and he's saying, look, the same way I would leave my house to go on a trip that I have to take, I could leave my sukkah to go on a trip that I have to take. But that's only true if it's a trip that I have to take. Because if it's a trip that I have to take, and I refrain from taking that trip, now I'm a mitztaer. Now it's not teishvu ke'ein taduru, because now I'm staying in my sukkah. I'm refraining from taking this trip that I have a need. I have a tzorich to take this trip. And I'm refraining from taking the trip in order to stay in the sukkah. But then the yeshivas HaSukkah is making me a mitztaer. I'm staying in the sukkah when I don't want to be. I really have to take the trip. That's not teishvu ke'ein taduru. I'm not living in my sukkah the way I would live in my house. If this was my house, I would zicha leave, because I have a need to go take a trip. You're making me refrain from taking the trip to stay in the sukkah. That's an inyan of mitztaer. V'loi kishe yeshivasa rak mainas mimenu tainug shehaya yochel lasos lulei chiyuv sukkah. You want to go to Six Flags, so now what you want to say is, I want to have a ptur from sukkah in order to go have a good time. That's not, to go have a good time, the Rishiv Zatzal is not nochis to that ptur, as teishvu ke'ein taduru. He seems to want, again, this like combination of teishvu ke'ein taduru with the factor of mitztaer, of Teishu Kain to Duru mixed in. But if it's just to go to Six Flags, what? You're going to be go mi mevatel mitzvah say in order to go to Six Flags? Like the Rishon Sal says, V'rak b'mokim shemateres halichasai l'derech eino l'shem tainug. If the goal of your trip is not a pleasure trip, elamachma sheyesh tzarich bazeh. The goal of your trip is that you have a tzarich. Ki going l'tzarich schara. I have to go do business. It's part my parnasa. My parnasa is at stake. So I have a tzarich. Then ptur hu min Succah. Then you have a ptur of Teishu Kain to Duru. I have a need to leave my house. And if I had a need to leave my house all year, I would leave. So on Sukkot, I have a need to leave my Sukkah, I leave my Sukkah. But you don't have a need to leave your Sukkah. You want to go have a good time. You want to go to Hershey. I think there's a Sukkah at Hershey. But let's say it wasn't. You want to go to Hershey. So there's no ptur to leave your Sukkah because you want to go have a good time in Hershey. The Hoysif, and the Rishon Zal adds in the Igris, and he says, "Shebalav hachi bevur b'Gemara." The Gemara says in Menachos, "Shemishim is batal mikiyah mitzvah say." If somebody is mevatel a mitzvah say, nena shal kach b'shas charon af. At a time where the Rebbeinu Shalom's anger is eminent, chas v'chalila, and people are becoming punished, our times sounds, unfortunately, hopefully with the new Gzera, maybe it won't be that way. I'm saying this year on Erev Yom Kippur, maybe we should have a Mirz Hashem, a good kvittel, we should have a good Gzera on Yom Kippur. Maybe, hopefully, the Rebbeinu Shalom's Charayin Af will abate, but it feels like a Zman of Charayin Af. Chas v'chalila, when there's a Zman of Charayin Af, if you're mevatel from a mitzvah say, nena shal kach, you get punished for that. Umishim is patel mi mitzvah sukkah. If you're going to be mevatel the mitzvah of sukkah, kishe'en lo tzarich, we have no tzarich. Elarak machma sheroitzel lehisaneg, where you just want to go out for a tiyul. Harehu b'chlal zeh. The Rishon Zatzal says that's b'chlal zeh. So no, says Rav Moshe, don't rely on this ptur of holchei derachim for epis hamoed trip. Now, going to visit parents that live away, that might be more a shaila of shluchei mitzvah, that's kibbud av. So you have to ask a shaila depending on what your exact situation is. But to go to Six Flags, to go stam on a trip, to be mevatel from Sukkah al shluchei mitzvah, the Rishon Zatzal says no way. V'chein kasav agayd Rishon Zalman Arbach she'aser adavar she'mavur b'magen Avram she'en lahakiz dam. Okay. Now, in the next paragraph, they do bring down Me'idach, on the other hand, so will be Malamet Schus on the people who do use this ptur. Das Agon Rabbi Yosef Shalom al Yashiv, Zatzal, Shem Mutter Min Adin Lotzis L'Til. He says that Min Adin, you could go on a trip and not have a sukkah. Mipnei Shederech Dira B'Kach. He takes a much narrower, a much more pashut view of this ptur. He says the ptur is Teishu Kain to Duru. You would leave your house to go to Six Flags, so you could leave your house. You could leave your sukkah to go to Six Flags. And if you skip a bunch of lines, maybe 10, 12 lines, it says here, Ulamaisa, halacha lamaisa, daitoi, it's the opinion of Rabbi Yashiv Zatzal, shemi sheyesh lo tzarich lotzes l'tiyul. Somebody has to go out on a tiyul, the kids are clamoring, they got to get out of the house. You should be machmer on him and stop him from going. Achen kishe'en lo tzarich, there's mamish no tzarich. Kasav kavit shuvas shalom lahachnis es atzma l'chiyav mitzvah. Then he should be machnis himself to the chiyav of mitzvah. V'loy lalechis l'derech lihipater mimena. And then I'll close off the chen dasa going to Reb Karelitz shemuter lotzeis l'tiyul. I love this lashon of Reb Karelitz Zatzal. He says, yes, minadin muter lotzeis l'tiyul. Teishu Kain to Duru. Ach, shtushu la'abed mitzvah yikara b'shul tiyul. You're going to go be ma'abed a mitzvah of sukkah to sit b'tzila de be'menusa for a tiyul? He says a shtus. So you have over here Rav Moshe says you can't rely on this heter of holchei derachim for a hamoed trip, and he says that it would fall under the rubric of being mevatel a mitzvah say, where a person would get an einish for that bizman charoin af. You have Rabbi Yashiv, who's more easygoing about it. Rabbi Yashiv says, halacha l'maisa, really it's mutter. And then Reb Karelitz, who says, yeah, it's mutter. but it would be a shtus to be ma'abed the mitzvah of Sukkah in order to go on a tiyul. Okay, with that, we're going to close today's shir. Again, I'm saying this shir on Erev Yom Kippur. Everyone should have a gemach, sibet tova, a good gebench yar. The tefillos should be neskabel, and the schus of limud Torah, the charayin af of the Rebbeinu Shalom should abate. The Rebbeinu Shalom should have rachmanis on Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom, the schus of limud Torah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should bring Yeshua's, refuas, and parnas and shidduchim to all those in need. And we should be zeicha finally to an end to the Rebbeinu Shalom's charayin af. Mamish an end to the charayin af. And we should be zeicha to the bias girl tzedek b'mherav yameinu. We should have the kohen gadol doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. We should be zeicha to see the chut hashani, the red scarlet piece of wool turned to white with kippur avonos. We should have a sarah mishtaleach. We should have the avodah lefnaya lefnim, and the world should be what the world is supposed to be. We should be able to live as a mamleches kayhana v'goy al ptur in Yerushalayim habenuya. Memherav yameinu amen. Be well.